Hi, CPOC. Glad to be back with you all virtually once again. Welcome to another legal update from the Lex Rex Institute. It's been an eventful summer. We've had a lot of different cases going on and a lot of developments that we can share with you. We have limited time, though, so I'm going to focus just on two of our most recent developments. The first is going to be in Dr. John Eastman's case. Now, I think most of you folks are aware of who Dr. John Eastman is, but for those of you who aren't, Dr. Eastman was Trump's attorney in a lot of the post-election 2020 litigation challenging the results of that election, and specifically, he advised President Trump with respect to the role of the vice president and how best to challenge the electoral votes on the electoral count on January 6th. Now, because of that, I guess that made a lot of left-wing folks angry. They don't think that Trump should get legal advice on how to properly advance his case post-election. But because of that, they're upset. They filed a lot of bar complaints, filed a lot of criminal complaints too. But in addition to the criminal indictments in Georgia and Arizona, one of the less followed cases is Dr. John Eastman's proceedings before the California State Bar, where they're basically trying to take away his law license because of the advice that he gave President Trump. And that was exactly the recommendation that the lower court, actually it's not really a court, the hearing department of the California State Bar gave. They said that Dr. Eastman had committed misconduct that warranted suspension of his license. So we're currently appealing that. And the appeal is still with the State Bar Court of California, now with the Appeals Division. And just last Friday, we filed our appeals brief in that case. It's 75 pages long. You can read it. We'll put a link in the description of this video. But here's one particular excerpt that I'm especially proud of. It must be emphasized that the hearing department is the first court in this nation's history to consider the constitutional question of the vice president's authority to resolve disputes over electoral votes. This is a novel and unresolved issue, directly derived from our nation's highest law and arguably a non-justiciable political question not subject to judicial review. Nevertheless, the hearing department of the State Bar Court of California found itself qualified to authoritatively resolve this issue. That puts it mildly. We're hopeful for justice for Dr. John Eastman, and if we don't get it at this level, there are still additional courts that we can appeal to, and Dr. Eastman is committed to taking this all the way. If you want more information, go to our YouTube video for this video, look at the description, and we'll provide Dr. Eastman's support site. By the way, he does still need support on that site. For those who are interested, it's givesendgo.com/Eastman, and any contribution helps, as well as prayers or well wishes. I know he really appreciates those too. For those of you who want to stay updated on what's going on in Dr. Eastman's case, there's a very favorable reporter who does most of her work on X, formerly Twitter. Her name's Rachel Alexander, and she's actually particularly qualified to report on this case because she was the subject of her very own persecution by her state bar in Arizona. Suffice it to say, she is very capable and competent to report on this, and she keeps things absolutely up to date. By all means, please follow her on X. That's Rachel Alexander. Next, we've got our case challenging the Voter Choice Act in California, involving your very own Michelle Morgan as one of our plaintiffs. And CPOC has been absolutely instrumental in this fight. And for those of you who aren't already aware of this case, I think most of you are, but what this case challenges is a California law called the Voter Choice Act. And what this law did is, among other things, it transitioned any county that opted in, so counties that wanted to do this, switched from having precincts, where everybody went to their own precinct to vote, and switched to having instead vote centers, where you could vote anywhere in the county, and they would just kind of, mix all the ballots together and then count them at the end of the day. Well, if you have people voting at any different polling location, there's got to be some way of keeping track of who's voted. And you can't use old-fashioned paper rosters to do that. So what the VCA requires is electronic poll books, live updated poll books. Well, it turns out the only way to do that is to connect them to the internet. And it just so happens that another provision of California law says that no part of a voting system may be connected to the internet. So you got a little bit of a contradiction there. And anybody who knows centuries-old canons of interpretation can tell you that when there's a mandatory provision, one that everybody has to follow, and one that only applies when counties opt into it, guess which of those two controls? That's right, it's the one that everybody's got to follow, the mandatory provision. So that's what our case is arguing. We brought that issue before the judge in this case, and, I guess, to put it mildly, it didn't go particularly well. I mean, first we had issues even filing and getting a hearing date. The clerk clearly didn't want to hear the case and kept kicking it back to us. We finally did manage to get it through once we called them on what they were doing, got it before the judge. And when this went to hearing on Monday of this week, the judge pulls up the calendar for our case and says, I'm ruling against your motion. No oral argument. Client was not allowed to sit at counsel table. Really no due process at all. So needless to say, we have to appeal this, and we have to appeal it fast if we want this resolved before the November election. And I believe that it's imperative that it is resolved because it's an important step in getting our elections secure, especially in Orange County. Now, we didn't initially factor in an appeal into our cost for this litigation. So we are coming to you once again and asking for contributions on this. And, we really need an It's a Wonderful Life moment here. We got to have everybody step up and fund this thing, or we're still going to have this in November. But this is our last shot. If we can do this, I think we have a good shot of correcting California law on this point and ensuring that our elections are fairly conducted the way that the California Elections Code really requires they be conducted. All right, that's all for our casework, but I just want to remind everybody, we've mentioned before, and it's coming up very soon in the near future, we're doing a poll watching webinar. Now, that's not going to be a comprehensive poll watcher training. Instead, what it is it's supplemental to a more general poll watcher training, and it teaches you tips and tricks for finding errors, sorts of errors you should look for, how to deal with elections workers who tell you that you can't be there, knowing your rights, knowing how to assert them, all that sort of thing. The stuff that's actually going to make you be effective as a poll watcher. And then, not just that, but we'll teach you how to create an affidavit that is what attorneys need so they can pursue election lawsuits and win on them. We keep losing on a lot of these lawsuits. Well, LexRex doesn't, but other law firms lose a lot of these lawsuits, not because it's bad legal work or because the judges are biased, though we all know there is some of that, but a lot of it's just these affidavits weren't in ship shape. They weren't the way they had to be to win the lawsuit. So let's correct that on the front end. Let's get these affidavits as good as we possibly can, and we'll help you do that with our webinar. We'll also be releasing over the next several weeks or months a series of videos on how to vote for all those offices that no one really knows anything about. Things like water commissioner or comptroller. What's a comptroller? Or all of those, like 20 judges you vote for every single election. Who the heck knows how to vote for those people? We're not going to tell you who to vote for. I don't think that's appropriate. But we will tell you how to evaluate the candidates. Because, otherwise it's a shot in the dark. What do? Usually you Google the names and say, well, this guy supports family. Or it's not a great way to vote for candidates. So we're going to be teaching you a better method to do that. And we'll have a series of videos on each of those offices. So look forward to that. All right, thanks again, CPOC, and thank you for being the amazing patriots that you always are. It's really an honor to fight this fight with you, and we continue to look forward to doing that in the future. Talk to you again next month.